What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Contractor Secrets podcast. Long time coming, man. I think we've crossed paths online for years. I mean, you are the ultimate contractor coach, and what you've done with the Contractor Fight. The following you have is feels like an army. It's just amazing what you've accomplished. We had the pleasure of connecting not too long ago. I think you and I have a lot of similarities after connecting, man. And one thing that I'm happy to say is that you're cut from the painting cloth. And I think that honestly, I think the best coaches come from the painting world, man. I don't know what it is, but welcome, Mr. Tom Reber, to our show. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, Tanner. Thanks for having me, man. Yeah, it's funny. I think some of the best coaches are from the painting industry because of all the frickin' moving parts that a painting contractor has to keep together. Like if you think of all the trades, we're probably the most man-hour heavy, right?
I would agree.
I mean, you do 100 grand in painting. What are you spending in material? 15 grand, maybe.
Sure.
The rest is labor, and just the amount of management that you have to do, and the effort it takes to keep the seats in the airplane filled to take off every week. And
yeah,
that's what we talk about in the fight all the time, man. You can't, I view every month, all those working days, those are seats on the plane, and if you got 3 employees working in the field, that's 24 seats a day. You got to fill those hours.
Sure.
And that's, I think, where a lot of people get into trouble is they're not fanatical about filling the seats on the plane.
Man, the painting business is so interesting. It's so diverse, but it's also, each project is different. It's insane. Every house has so many different elements and variables, and it's not so much the structure, it's the substrate. It's what was put on before that we are expected to navigate, and ultimately many of us estimate and then learn while we're working on the job. It is a very interesting, diverse trade. I think it's if you come from the painting business, man, you've been through it. So I want to get the most out of this. I want to hear a little bit about your story. Who's Tom Reber? I would say I have an audience that's a lot of startup guys, a lot of guys that are just wanting to learn the trade. Of course, we have some people that have grown since then, but our core audience are people that are hungry in terms of sales, hungry in terms of marketing, hungry in terms of scaling this thing. So who's Tom Reber? I want to hear your story of where you come from and what called you to get into this space to coach and teach and share.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. I'm a guy who is just trying to have a big impact in the world. I think I came out of the womb wired to at least to believe that I was put here to do something impactful. It's funny when you look back over history and you connect the dots of your life, it's really interesting to see how pretty much everything I've been doing in some way, shape, or form has been coaching and helping people get better. I started, I've coached everything from Little League baseball and football and basketball with my kids. I spent time in the ministry. A lot of people are surprised by that. They had no idea that I was a campus minister for about 10 years. I coached high school football for 17 years. When I was running our painting business in Chicago, before I was out of there in 2011, 2012, I was always tapping other business owners on the shoulder and just trying to mentor them and help them out. And, I think just, you got to pay attention to your life. You got to, we all have a natural bent towards things, you know what I'm saying? And that's where this kept pulling me, was to, coaching. And so in 2017, I guess you can call it that, we officially launched the Contractor Fight. I think it was in June or July. I think it was July. And it's just been a great ride, man. We get to help a lot of people, level up their life, their business. The men and women in the trades are the hardest working people in the world, right? And yet if hard work was all that it took to be successful, there'd be a lot more successful people, but you gotta, I was talking about, you can work your ass off to climb the ladder to the top, but you got to make sure the ladder's on the right wall.
Right.
Otherwise,
right.
But yeah, so I've been doing that, helping people, putting on events and coaching and speaking all over. I had a had a few minutes as a host on HGTV and being in and out of the Marine Corps. And my wife and I, we call her the Queen. Her name's Lee. We live in Colorado Springs with 5 kids.
Wow.
They're all out of the house. And I can actually tell you, I think they're more expensive when they're out of the house. But anyway.
I'm not there yet. Couple toddlers.
Well, enjoy that time, man, because it goes so fast. I know everybody says that. And when your kids are young, somebody says that and you're like, yeah. But I frequently have these moments where, being a football coach, I'm always about looking back at the game tape. You know, how could we be better? And there's a lot of things that I could look back at, you know, as a parent that, man, if I was just a little more focused and dialed in and present and not so consumed by the business at times, you know, working my ass off we all do this, by the way. We work our asses off to provide for the people that we love and to meet their needs and give them a great life. And if we're not careful, we end up stealing from them, you know, a lot of time and memories and certainly money, all in the name of taking care of them. So I think that's why that's such a theme in our coaching and speaking and what I do in the fight, what our team does. The best messages we get, man, are, you know, dude, your event or your program or whatever helped me be a better dad, or it saved my marriage. And the money part's the easy stuff, man. That's just some math and some focus and consistency. But, you know, we do this to truly help people have a better life inside out. We talk about like it's a strong you, strong home, then a strong business in that order. You got to take care of you mentally, spiritually, physically, so that you're strong enough to give what you need to give to your family and then to the business and so on. So
it's that airplane analogy, right? I mean, you can't put the, you know,
the overused analogy that we've all shared, but it's so true.
It is.
And there's certainly seasons of life, you know, if painters listening to this, you guys know the phone starts ringing off the hook in the springtime and it's go time, you know? And so I think that's even where, you know, communicating to your spouse or significant other, like just, hey, I know we do this every year, but it's go time. And so let's get on the same page with our expectations and let's pre-plan a month in advance of date nights and, just making sure that we're getting the time together. And, you know, that's one of the areas I went wrong way back in the day was I just expected everybody to read my mind. And I figured they all knew that I was just out there working hard during the go season. So
sure, man, this is hitting me as someone who's also a student of what you're saying and also someone that's trying to also move the needle, you know, in terms of helping people have mental clarity and hit that freedom point, you know, Tom. Now, was there a point in your business journey that you hit this roadblock in a way that would allow you to see the value of what you're doing? Or did you just go into this like, did you just leave the high school? Now, let me ask you this before I go any further. Were you a defensive coordinator?
No, I was an offensive guy. I'm an offensive. I'm all about scoring points, man. Being on the attack. Yeah.
I would have guessed defensive, but I love this. An attack. An attack. You weren't just, you know, were you a shotgun guy? I mean, you know, the air raid.
Yeah, pretty much. You know, we did a lot of. So I seemed to coach. I only had one coaching gig where we actually had like a real offensive line.
And in high school, that's hard to come by.
And we went really deep into the playoffs. I had probably the top running back in the state. Our offensive line probably averaged 260 across the board.
Wow, dude.
And we would just run down people's throats, and you know, that's fun. But everywhere else I coached and all the other seasons, it was spread them out and just get rid of the ball quickly and attack the whole field. And there was a lesson in that. I had taken I was a head coach for 3 years, and I got talked into running the triple option when I took over that program.
Okay.
And and there's a lesson in this for business, by the way. So it's not just football. I let other people sway me into what I was a first-year head coach, and I think as a first-year head coach, as a first-year, second-year, whatever business owner, we listen to a lot of other voices, and this was a hard lesson on making sure that you listen to your own voice, because my own spidey sense was telling me it wasn't the right move. And we were stacked with talent on, for our passing game. And there's tons of conversations and months of the shit that I could recap that I won't. But the bottom line is I coached something I didn't know.
Right.
And I, what ended up getting me the gig and all that other stuff, I threw out the door because I listened to other voices. And I always encourage people, like, sometimes a coach will tell you, like, hey, you should do this or you should do that. And I always want people to listen to themselves, like, take the information that you're getting, take the concept of it, right? So if I say you got to raise your prices and I'm in your face, Tanner, I'm going, you need to triple your prices right now. But, maybe there's that line between being afraid to do it and being stupid about it.
Sure.
And so what is the concept there? The concept is you got to get paid. I'm trying to help you get paid. Let's be bold in these things. So if you're booked 6-8 weeks out, now's the time to raise your price.
Pick them up. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But if you have no work on the board. So again, I just, I'm really, that was a big lesson because, it set the tone for me being one of the most losingest coaches in the city for 3 years in a row because I didn't listen to my gut, and it was a really hard thing to turn around. And so you have to listen to what, and so, like, if there's something that keeps poking at you right now, if you're listening to this and there's a move in the business you think you need to make, there's a conversation with somebody that you keeps coming up that you think you need to have, that's yourself telling you got to do this, and don't ignore your own voice.
The segue from coaching into painting, was that the next?
No, I was I was a partner in a business. We were doing about 300 jobs a year, sometimes up to 4, sometimes less, whatever. But when I partnered with my buddy or my business partner, at one of the non-negotiables, we each kind of had this come to Jesus talk, like, hey, if we're going to do this, here's things that are important to us. And I was already coaching high school football. So I was already a few years into it. And I just said, you got to know that I coach football. And if you're not cool with that, then we probably shouldn't be business partners. Okay. And there were other things that, he did. And it was a great partnership and all that stuff. But no, I did it while I was building businesses. And my last year of coaching, I think, was I guess it would have been the 2019 football season was my last season.
Wow.
And
not too long ago.
Yeah. And then the fight just grew to the point where it was just stupid for me to be doing it. So and I have other businesses and interests and
What early challenges did you run into running the painting business? I mean, what are some challenges that you wouldn't think that Tom Reber, the Contractor Fight, CEO would be going through on a what I would say a molecular level here, like what on a granular level, excuse me, like what are some things that like would seem basic to the average individual that you actually struggle with?
Well, pretty much everything that comes out of my mouth in the fight for the last 10 years or so has been rooted in me not knowing what the hell I was doing in the beginning.
Yeah.
I didn't know my numbers. I allowed myself to get pushed around by employees and by prospects and by customers. And I didn't know how to communicate well with people. I didn't know how to sell. I thought sales was just, you go out there and you write shit on a thing and you go, here's the number, and, I've had, there was a guy named Bill. He was a lawyer. The first sizable project I ever did was in my first year of business. It was a $28,000 project. I thought I was going to be rich. I was like, man, I'm killing it. Right. It's going into the winter time. And, a bunch of people. So here's the story for you. There were a bunch of contractor guys in town that had been working on Bill's house because he was GC in his own house. And apparently Bill was a nightmare, and everybody told me to stay away. And that's where I didn't listen to the advice. So sometimes, that when you don't have the knowledge and this and that of running business, you do need to listen to people that have been around the block, but they're like, dude, you need to stay away. He doesn't pay people. He's a pain in the ass to work for. And I'm like, I'm different. We all think we're the exception. And that job cost me $45,000 to do it. I charged him $28,000, which means I should have charged basically $100. If it cost me $45 to do it, I should have charged $100.
Wow. Was this a painting job?
it was a paint job. It was new construction. He GC'd his own house. He didn't know what the hell he was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. I let him knock me around for about 14 months. He called me on Christmas morning at 7 a.m. to yell at me about his stain color on his 3 staircases that he approved, and he wanted them stripped. And here it's Christmas morning, and me, like a dumbass, I answer the phone at 7 o'clock on Christmas morning. So it's man, I've made every mistake. I mean, listen, I've been bankrupt. I've, made a lot of money, lost it all, got it all back, and then some. And I think there's just a lot of, unfortunately, I learned by mistakes.
Yeah. But you know what? Generally, you can really bring the point home to someone after you've made the mistake, because it's from straight experience. The importance of job costing was probably a foundational thing for you early on. Tell me about that. I mean, tell me, you're big on job costing, you're big on numbers. Like, although yes, we know it's important, but in your words, like, what is the value behind consistently job costing, consistently being a student of those numbers, and taking it seriously, not just being like, yeah, I think I'm making money. Like, if the cash flow is coming in, what are the benefits on your side?
Well, it's the correct information. How many times do you talk to a contractor, or maybe yourself in the past or whatever? I know it was for me, where tax time would come and you just take this big box of shit and hand it to your CPA and ask them to work a miracle out of it. Right. And even today, when, I talk to people, I'm like, hey, I talked to a guy this morning and I'm like, what are your sales? He's like, I really don't know. And I said, okay, well, what's your profit like, and your gross profit? And you sell a $10,000 job, what's it cost you to produce? And I don't know, I got to check with my accountant. And I'm like, guys, it's not your accountant's job or your bookkeeper to know how you're doing on your projects. Like, you don't have to be a CPA, you don't have to be a bookkeeper, you don't have I've never in my lifetime had QuickBooks on any of my own computers. All right. I don't even know how to get into our own QuickBooks. Well, I do have the app, so it does my Face ID, and I could look at something now, but the team's got all the buttons pushed to make sure I can't touch anything in there and screw it up or whatever. But to me, each project you do is like game day in football, right? You prepare, you work hard, you come up, you lick your finger and hold it up to the wind and come up with a number, of how many hours shit's gonna take, unless you have drip jobs. And and that's what most of us do. And we think we're making money, but then when you sit down, and we had a rule that 24 hours, within a project being done, it needed to be job costed, so that we could make adjustments going forward. It's like watching the game tape. How did we do? We thought we were going to do this. This is what we did in reality. And it's not like pointing fingers, because you know how it is, man. You're the operations guy, I'm the sales guy. I'm like, you need to move faster, and you're going, you need to give us more time. And to me, production is 2 wings of an airplane, man. You need both to fly. And when
job costing brings everyone together.
It does, because when you communicate it right to your team, it's like, there's something in this for all of us.
Right.
Okay. We're going to win together. And it was a couple of years of like regular crew leader meetings every week and training our guys. Like, I did a whole whiteboard session with our company one day on why man hours are important. And I broke down, I think at the time, it was in the early 2000s, we were charging, I don't know, $75 an hour or whatever for labor. And I said, I wrote $75, and then I just did percentages. I went, okay, 50% of this is labor and materials, which is X amount of dollars. And then 10% is towards this, and this is this, and this is this. And at the time, you got all the way down to the bottom of the thing, and there might have been 8% left of the $75, which is what, it's about $6. Per man hour that's left over towards net profit after everything's paid. And then I was like, this is if we finish a job on time. What happens if we're an hour over? What happens if we're a day over? I said, so this is why it's important. And then communicating what's in it for them to bring them in on time. We set up, performance pay and some different things like that, and milestones as a company that everybody would win.
And that is born through job costing. Like,
it is. And
it's a requirement.
Well, and here's the thing, most conversations that we had with our team in the early days around the job costing the hours were adversarial, meaning their guard was up a little. They didn't really know what our motive was. around pushing them to finish jobs on time until we took the time to educate them.
Yeah.
And when that happened, just, you got to be consistent with this every week. You got to go over it. Like, okay, Nathan, Jose, Tony, whoever, what job did you finish last week? Okay, it was the Smith job, was bid for 100. We brought it in at 96. Great job.
Yeah.
Okay. If a job was over, we didn't bother talking about it in the meeting. We would just pull the guy aside and go, hey, if we did this job over, what would happen? And sometimes it was on me as the estimator.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was a batshit crazy homeowner who wouldn't leave him alone. We all get those from time. And I've had, Tom, I wouldn't do anything different. It was bid right. This lady was just a whack job, and she wouldn't stop pulling me away to ask me a freaking question, So,
in there, man.
Or you got weather delays, or you got, shit happens where
records, and seeing what that is, and being able, even for me, I made 15% on a job 5 weeks ago. 15%. It was a $15,000 job, and it's not only the we didn't lose money, but the emotional stress that got sent to the team because we underbid it, and that was, it would have been more stressful had I thought we were in the red, because I would have assumed without job costing, guaranteed that we lost money. But because I job costed, I'm like, okay, we didn't lose money, but guys, we gotta fix this, and it was an estimation issue.
Yeah, what happens is when you own your crap as an estimator, when you pull the team together and you debrief the job, and the reality is our people are working hard every day. They're not showing up going, I want to do a shitty job, and not hit the times. But when they see you being willing to own your crap, have conversations around production rates, and we work together, then what happens is, fast forward a couple of years of us doing this, I remember one day our top crew leader pulled me aside. He goes, hey, I've been looking at our data on the last 4 or 5 jobs we've done. And he goes, you're not giving us enough time to paint baseboards. Okay. Now, usually that's where it stops, right?
Sure.
It's always the guys coming to you going, you don't give us enough time.
Right.
But because the trust had been built, we had a great culture.
Yeah.
He goes, you're not giving us enough time on the base, but I'm seeing that you're giving us about 15 minutes more time than we need to paint doors.
Wow.
And I said, all right, well, I'll just take 15 minutes from doors. I'll throw it to the production rate of the base. We'll slow that down for you. And it should even things out. Because, guys, we want to be as accurate as possible. You know this with the company you have. I mean, it's like, estimating, what do they say? It's part art and part science. The science is, under normal prep conditions, we produce 100 square feet of drywall, 2 coats per hour. Right. And then you add for the patching or excessive this, that, and the other. That's the art. And so when you can build that trust in your team, good things happen. And then the other big thing job costing did for us is, I don't know how many times through the years guys would come up and go, can I have a raise? And or I had one of my cousins work for me, and he'd be like, hey, I did a good job this week, right? We had no metrics to tell whether you were doing your job. We had no metrics. I coached a landscaper here in the Springs. He's a great guy. And,
that's tough.
He has all of his projects. He has a spreadsheet that everything is job costed and ranked by gross profit, ranked by the foreman that ran the job. And when a foreman comes in and says, hey, I want more money, he just pulls up the sheet and says, hey, you're on target. You're doing great. Here's some more money. Or work on this for the next couple months, get these averages up, start bringing jobs in, and we'll have the conversation again. So it could be a tool as well.
There's no worse feeling than being put in that position as a business owner and not having any data to present other than, well, we'll see. And you kind of just float it off, it's tough. So I mean, we've hit that point. I also love your analogy of watching film. I'm a football guy, played football in high school. But it's almost like if you don't do job costing, you just keep playing game after game after game after game and never having a film day, right? Every game I ever played in high school, that first day back was film. It was like, what did you do wrong? And there were things in that film session that we were blind to. It's like, well,
Yeah.
why is this person doing this? And why is this person doing that? And look at this person. And it's almost like if you don't do that, there's no feedback loop, right?
Mm-hmm.
I thought of this. I'm like, when they first came over to the United States, the feedback loop was pretty long, right? I mean, they
Yeah.
had to come here and then they'd go back and tell everybody what happened, right? For me,
Mm-hmm.
it's like nowadays we're in a position where we can really hammer back that feedback in business. And I think it's so important. I want to talk to you about a big topic. I want to pivot here because
Okay.
you've dubbed this, there's this thing you call the Shin-fu method, right? And that I remember when you launched that. It wasn't that long ago. It was like, what, a year ago?
Well,
you always had, but maybe you like
we've been teaching and coaching around it since about 2015, 16.
Okay.
And we released an online training course about a year and a half ago.
I saw when you launched it. Okay.
Yeah.
And ever since then, dude, you can't go a day without somebody talking about this. So I like a high level of what this is, because again, being in your group, like that's obviously a killer for you, and like it must be creating some impact. So what is it about?
Yeah. So we'll go super high level here. Before we run out and spend time with a prospect, we simply want to make sure they're a good fit, right? I mean, that's like sales 101, pre-qualification 101. Most contractors, self-included back in the day, used to just, you called our office, you live in our service area and you have a pulse, we'll go see you. And then you go out there and you tap dance in the yard or in the living room, telling them how great you are and showing them all your sales materials and whatever little presentation you have. And then, if you're really advanced, you hold up your iPad, you go, here's the price. And if you're not, you got to go home and work it up and type the shit up and then negotiate against yourself for 2 hours before you hit send and all that other crap.
Right.
Just to get ghosted. I don't know how many times through the years I would hear, like, I would go home and my wife would be like, how'd it go? I'd miss dinner, right? I'd be late for dinner. I'd miss dinner. I'd come home. She's like, how was it? I said, oh, it was good. I got a really good feeling about this one. They really liked me and our company. And then you send shit over and then they go into witness protection. You can't find them again, right? Like they just drop off the planet. And so, or you have, I think we all have pet peeves. One of my pet peeves is when I see people, and I understand the heart behind this, so I'm not ripping on it. It just bothers me because it's preventable. But you see all the memes like on Fridays. It's like, it's follow-up Friday. It's follow-up Friday. I fucking hate follow-up Friday. Just so you know. Man, when you pre-qualify properly, you will not be typing things up for people that will not be your client. So we teach this thing that it's 10, 15, 20-minute pre-qualification phone call. Salespeople can do it. The owner can do it. Your office manager can do it and be trained. We train everybody to do this through tons of role plays and stuff. But the bottom line is, can I even help you? What are your reasons for buying? What's most important to you? And it's not price. It's not that they just want their house painting. There's usually an emotional thing. We know sales is all about pain and pleasure, and they're trying to solve a problem, right? Can I help you? Can I truly understand what's important to you? Let's talk about the money. People in your situation that do a project like this typically spend between this and this,
I like
blah, blah,
that.
blah.
I like that framework.
Yeah. And then step 3, 4, and 5, we won't have to cover right now, but basically it's just making sure that we're on the same page. Should you choose to invite me out to your property, I don't want to invite myself out. I want to be a guest, and guests are invited. Sure. And so we teach you how to get invited if we're a good fit. So if you go, 10 grand, 12 grand sounds good for this project, then I'm going to go, hey, great. So if you invite me out and I tell you the exact same thing standing in your house that I'm telling you over the phone, and it falls in that range, what's going to happen next? And sometimes they'll go, well, I'm going to need to get 74 other bids and compare them and, all this. And I'm like, okay, great. Because I can tell you, we're going to be in that range unless there's a crazy game changer, and like because sometimes you get there and you just see the access to something or whatever. And you're like, there's no way, I got to rent a lift or whatever. Right. We have people send pictures and videos so we can have these conversations. So, we just want to make sure that, like, if you want to go get a bunch of other bids, go get them. I am not in the proposal writing business. Okay. We are not. And this is how we help people like double their sales and do it in half the time, because they're not running around to 30 leads a week. They're only going to see the right 12, and they're selling those jobs at a 30 to 50% higher rate than their competitors are, because they've created a connection with people.
Sure.
Now, let me say this. This originated because one of my partners, my original partners, we used to have a company called the Contractor Sales Academy, and Steve's a pond guy. His last name's Shinholzer, and it's called Shin-fu. We were hanging around having a couple drinks one night, and somebody's like, Steve, man, I heard you on the phone, and you're like, people throw you an objection, and it's like kung fu, man. It's like, and the guy was like, one of the other guys, kind of little, I think he was a little baked at the time. He looks over and he goes, man, it's like Shin-fu, man. And that's how the name came about.
That is funny.
And that was designed, we see a lot of contractors, I'm sure you do as well, that are a 1 or 2 man operation. They're 300, 400, 500 grand a year. They're wearing all the hats. They don't have time to go see everybody.
Yeah.
It just becomes a time issue. Right? I don't have all the time in the day to just run around because I'm wearing all these other hats. And that's where it really added a benefit to those smaller contractors. Now, somebody listening to this might be going, this doesn't apply to me because I have full-time sales guys. They have all day to go out and sell, and they can meet with everybody, and I want them to do that.
They want to fill their schedule too, right?
Yeah.
They want to
I'm like, that's totally cool. But make sure, like a lot of people are like, oh, you guys teach people to do this on the phone. And they think the goal of Shin-fu is to sell the job over the phone. It's not the goal. The goal is just to make sure that we're on the same page before we meet. And a byproduct of that is many times our members will sell the project over the phone before they even get out there, and they'll just go out to confirm what they talked about and pick up a deposit check. Okay. But it's really designed to protect your time and make sure you're only spending your time in, the majority of your time with people that are truly a good fit for you. So that's the 30,000 foot view. There's a lot more to it, but it's really
can I interject on a sense of, there's been many times for me, and especially because if we go in with that pre-qualification, there's been many times where I feel like I had to build the value in person, because I felt like, hey, you know what? If I go there in person, I shake their hand, and I outline what's being, said on the phone, maybe I'm going to rub someone the wrong way, right? Maybe, if someone, got me on the phone, I'm a qualified buyer, right? Maybe I don't want to be asked about budget until you show me why I should be asked about budget. How do we navigate that?
Yeah, we call it the spirit of the conversation. Okay. So, you're going to call your lead back and you're going to be like, hey, Joe, I just wanted to thank you for reaching out to ABC Company. I know you got a lot of options, and I just want to let you know, no matter how this goes, I just appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation with us. Like, it just sets the table with gratitude right out of the gate.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to usually ask something along the lines of, hey, I have a few questions for you, before we move to the next step. Are you okay if I ask you a few questions? I'm speeding through this, by the way.
Yeah, I understand.
Tonality is so important, blah, blah, blah. The spirit you have. You can't just be like, hey, I don't run out there for free, answer these questions, right? You're not, that doesn't work. So, one of the questions I'm always going to ask is, how'd you find us? And 9 out of 10 times they're going to say something like, especially in painting, man, you had amazing reviews, or it was a referral from somebody. Really, I mean, call it 8 out of 10 leads, right? Or something like that. Then I'm going to dig into, I'm like, hey, so you mentioned you saw us on Google and you liked our reviews. Was there any reviews that jumped out at you that really made you go, hey, I'm going to call these guys?
Like that.
What I'm doing is I'm building social proof that I'm going to come back to later when I say, so listen, before we schedule a time and go to the next step, again, are you okay if I just ask you a few questions and make sure if I can even help you? And sometimes people will go, well, can't you just jump into your truck and run out here like everybody else? And I said, man, I can't wait to come out and meet you and look at your project. Okay. But, Tanner, a minute ago, you shared with me what Bob, your neighbor, said about us, and, specifically why you called us. He said you were this, and he said you were this, and he had a great experience. Or you mentioned, man, I saw you have like 250 of these amazing reviews on Google. I'm going to go back to that. I'm going to say, Tanner, can I share with you why so many people give us great reviews like that. See, I'm going back to the social proof, like a third party thing. And they're like, yeah, I'm like, it's because we follow a process. It's a very specific process to us. And whenever we don't follow it, things don't go well. And the process starts with us just having a 10 to 15 minute conversation just to make sure that we're on the same page, that I can even, number one, help you with your problem in the time frame that you need it. I'm going to talk a little bit about what this might cost and some things that could change that. Certainly, we got to come out and we got to put eyes on this thing. And by the way, painters complicate the Shin-fu more than any other trade. All right. I'm one of you guys, so I'm going to shoot it to you straight. You guys, it's nothing but friendly fire. You got so much damn head trash. You think you got to go rub your nipples on the wall to give a price. Okay. It doesn't, no, you don't have to go touch the wall. Trust me. Okay. You're going to touch the wall on the site visit to confirm everything you talked about on the phone call. Damn it. So quit complicating this shit, you knuckleheads. So it's truly like when you have the right spirit and tonality and you're making it about them, not about you, dude, you can say pretty much anything you want to people and they'll accept it they'll accept it and they'll be cool with it. And a lot of times it'll be like, hey, Tanner, based on what you're telling me here, and I pulled up your house on Zillow and I'm looking at your house, whatever it is. Typically a house like this, with all the bells and whistles and every add-on in the world and the premium products, I'm not getting technical. I'm just painting this big, huge picture. All right. Like this thing will be bulletproof. You won't need to paint it for another 600 years, whatever, you know what I'm saying? But like, we could do the fence. We could do, I don't want to get too much in the weeds for this for time's sake, but
set low expectations. You got to beef it up.
But you want to bracket. You want to bracket, and we teach a thing called bracketing. So I'll be like, based on what you're telling me, we could come out here and we could do like a Taj Mahal paint job where we can include the deck and all the doors and trim different color, and we'll even do the fence. Like I'm going to paint it, even though they didn't bring up the deck and the fence. This is a strategy that helps you bracket higher. Something like that might be 40 to 50 grand. Or we could come out and you could do similar color on the walls or on the home, a wash, high quality products, not all the bells and whistles for maybe 18 to 20, 22,000. Which of those conversations does it make sense for us to have? That is they will tell you their budget 100% of the time with that. Right. You're either going to hear, hey, that's kind of what I thought it was, when you come out and confirm this thing.
Sure.
Or they might say, and this is actually a win, by the way, is they're going to go, well, I'm certainly not doing that high end price. I don't need all that done. And even your other option is like 3 times the price of all the other bids I got. Okay. So then I'm going to ask a question. I hear that from time to time. Why do you think those other guys are so cheap? See, we make the assumption that we're expensive. The consumers often make the assumption that you're just high priced. No, you're appropriately priced because you know your damn numbers.
Right.
9 out of 10 painting contractors don't know their numbers.
Right.
That's why drip jobs exist to help them get up to speed with this. Right.
Absolutely.
So the last thing I want to do is run out to somebody's yard and tap dance and go, I'm going to unleash all my charisma. And I'll tell you, man, I'm really fucking good in person, by the way. Okay. I'm way better in person than I am on the phone, but I am not in the proposal writing business. If I'm going to go out there and tell you the same thing I just told you on the phone, and I'm within that range, and you still want to go get another bunch of other bids, then go get the other bids. That's okay. I'm not worried about it. And it's a mindset shift. It's like, you got to sell like you're independently wealthy.
2 things.
You got to sell like you don't have commission breath or you're desperate.
2 things. One, I imagine that this approach is much easier to master over the phone than it is in person because naturally nerves start kicking in person and you're in a fixed environment on the phone and you could strategically ask these questions, but also working on the biggest thing here, Tom, and from the outsider looking in, I have a different level of respect for this, the way you described it and how it's been watered down through other people that have been through the program, and you hear things is the way obviously is from the horse's mouth here. Like you're describing the tonality aspect of what you said makes all the difference. The tonality and the way you describe that is such a beautiful approach. How important is the role playing? Because NBA players, you know, at the end of the day, they play 86 games or whatever that is, but the practices, you know, never stop in between
Right.
that. And I feel like salespeople practice on their customers rather than the role playing. So part of the contractor fight,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
which is like going into a game just expecting to learn during a game when you're in like, you know, fight or flight mode for the entire, you know, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Tell me about the aspect of the contractor fight where role playing comes in and how you can help master what you just did, dude. Because if we can get out what you just did and put that into the businesses of everyone listening to this, this is a big shift. This is going to help a lot of people.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And yeah, this is such a deep topic here that I'm trying to give you the highlights. There's so much more to Shinfu than just a pre-qualification conversation, right?
The way you approach that beautiful.
It's a way of communicating with another human being and making it obvious that you care about them,
right?
That
mutual
this is all about them.
What I'm getting
this is about, and you deserve the respect back because you're a human being too. Okay. Right. And so you'll see a lot of times guys that have just done the video training, but they've never gotten into our battleground group and done the role plays that we do every day. We have live sales training role play calls every day, every weekday. And that's where you get good. It's like going to the driving range as a golfer. That's where you get better, right? There's 4 levels to learning a new skill. All right. There's the unconscious incompetence.
Okay.
It means you suck and you don't know it. That was me when I started as a salesperson. I just thought you go out there and you take some measurements and you have a conversation and you brag about how great you are, right? Like that's what I thought sales was. Right. I didn't know I wasn't any good at it. Once some light is shed on it, then you move with some work, you move into conscious incompetence.
Okay.
Like I'm not very good at this, or I have a lot of room to grow, but at least I know it. And then you keep working towards something, you know, keep going to the range, you know, you're taking those swings or rifle range or pistol range, whatever it is. And you start dialing it in. Now you move to conscious competence, which is like, hey, I'm getting pretty good at this, but I have to think about it, right? And then the level of 4 is mastery. That is unconscious competence, where it becomes second nature. That's the guitarist on stage shredding a solo, you know, like crazy guitar solo, and he's leaning over having a conversation with the sound guy about his monitors, right? You know what I mean? Because he's been there so many times. Right. So like those that really embrace the role plays, so we have a whole belt system. You come in as a white belt, you go to green all the way up to black, and then there's multiple black belt levels, right? Once you and by the way, you are not good at this until you have at least 100 role plays. You need 200 to be a black belt. Okay? Wow. And most of our members through the last decade or so will tell you they did not start to really get the power of this until they were over 100 role plays.
Unbelievable.
Where it becomes they can't unlearn things at that point. It's so second nature.
Variables,
right?
Because when you're on the phone with somebody, like you have to first like read who you're talking to. Is it an old lady? Is it a type A man? Is it somebody that sounds a little more passive? Yep. Like, and I think through my sales experience, and I worked in the restaurant, so I don't think you get a better speed dating sales approach than being a server at a restaurant, where you have to try to build value with different types of families, people, scenarios. You got the husband and wife, you got the husband and girlfriend, you got all these scenarios. You got the Chinese family, you got the Indian family, you got all these different, backgrounds, and you do your best to build value with them. And it's like, I think one of the things in the role playing is like, dude, you're just learning how to hit all the different pitches, man, learning how to read it, learning how to understand it, learning how to provide value on the fly. That would be the biggest thing for me.
And I love that you brought up the value word, because a lot of people will not understand that what's value to you might be different for me.
Sure.
Okay. So when I speak to groups about this stuff, people will be, I'll say, hey, everybody write down 5 reasons that a prospect should hire your company. Right.
Yeah.
they'll write no subcontractors and we're licensed and
Right,
we
right,
our
right,
warranty and 25 years experience and whatever it is, right? We can all think of these things in our own businesses.
right.
The problem is those are not value unless they're value to the prospect. So
Mm,
step one of our process here is called the motive. It's understanding that people buy for their reasons, not ours. Okay. Ours might be important and support that, but if you don't connect with their number one reason for doing the project and who they choose and all that shit, then you're making an assumption of what value is to them. And you can't understand somebody's value if you're doing all the talking all the time. And that's
one of my favorite questions is what's the story, and it just opens up
Mhm.
the can of worms, man. It's like, tell me what this. No, I know you want it painted. Like, what's the
Yeah.
story? How did we get here? Right?
Yeah. I mean, even something as simple as, how are you hoping that I can help you today?
Sure.
I get on the phone with people. That's one of my first questions, and I'm gonna probe and dig in. I'm like,
Yeah.
and again, I don't want to get so in the weeds here, but there was a post the other day that somebody did, and I'm trying to remember where I saw it. It was on Facebook. Somebody posted this thing. They said, "How do you respond to your price is higher than the other guys?"
Sure.
Right? And every freaking comment, man, was like, well, you get what you pay for,
Right.
and and it was all around defending your price.
Right.
That's what most salespeople do because they're not trained. They're not trained to take a breath, ask a great question, and shut their mouth, and then peel that back. Most salespeople, they pounce, they see blood in the water, and they jump all over it. Like you say, "Hey, how are you going to know you're going to hire the right contractor?" Right? That's a great open-ended question. Somebody says, "Oh, I don't have to clean up after them after they leave." Right? Most salespeople think that's deep enough on the motive, and it's not. That's the surface. And what we do is, if you're not trained, you pounce. You go, "Well, we Swiffer the floors and we cover things and we, and it's just you talking."
Yeah.
Where instead we'd say, "Peel, don't pounce. Peel it back. Just go, hey, that's interesting. It sounds like you've had some interesting experiences with contractors. Tell me more about that."
Peel, don't pounce.
And they will start to open up. And, God, I have so many examples, but I sold this project to a guy once. I got in his foyer and I was basically Shin-fuing him. Okay. It wasn't on the phone. The appointment was there, and you can Shin-fu in person, guys. If you happen to go out there, you can still get motive and talk budget and all that before you go home and spend hours typing shit up. Right. So anyway, I said, "Hey, it looks like, this was painted not too long ago. It doesn't look too bad. Why am I here?" And he's like, "We don't like the colors and blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Oh, what's keeping you from hiring the last guy?" And he's like, he says, "We'll never hire him again. They were a total mess." The old Tom would have pounced and would have been like, "Okay, let me go around, measure, and tell you all the reasons were great." And I said, "Hey, so what do you mean it was a mess?" He says, "Well, I was out of..." What's that?
They love to vent.
Yeah.
If they can talk to someone who knows the business and tell them the things, you're on to something, Tom.
So he goes and he says, basically, he picked the contractor, didn't hire the one that his wife wanted, probably because of money, whatever, who knows.
Sure.
And then he travels. He's gone most weekdays and home on the weekends. He said every night, they were there for about a week. Every night I'd call home to say goodnight to my wife and kids, and my wife would give me the third degree. She'd yell at me. She was pissed she had to babysit these grown men. They'd leaving tools around their little kids, and the routine, right? And pouncing would have been just like, "Oh, well, we never leave a mess, right?" And this and that. And I just kept peeling and peeling and peeling and peeling. By the time we were done, dude, he was paying me like 50% more than anybody else was going to charge for this job.
Wow.
I didn't even walk through the house before he agreed to doing the job, because his real motive was he did not want his wife to go through that again. That was his deciding factor. And I guarantee you nobody else got to that point because they were too busy barfing out all their reasons instead of understanding what value was to this guy.
That's a hard motive to dig into, man. And if you dig into that, now let me ask you this. When you're building value, once you get to that core motive, are you promising not to let his wife go through that again? Like, is that the one that if you're going to create one promise, it's like, you know what, at the end of the day, man, I'm going to promise that your wife will never have to go through that again as long as it's with us, or something along those lines. Like, once you peel it back.
Because here I'm going to answer everything there. Yep. I knocked on Scott's door at the scheduled time, eager to talk about painting his house. After exchanging pleasantries, I said, "Tell me why I'm here today." He explained they'd never been happy with the paint job. We already talked about that. He mentioned the quality was lacking, or he regretted hiring them. The old Tom would have pounced, assuming that the most important thing to Scott was quality. And I could have said, "We paint hundreds of homes and have amazing reviews, and we always produce work to the highest standards, blah, 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 blah," barf, right? As you'll see in a moment, quality, though important, was not Scott's top priority. Instead, I responded by peeling back what he shared with a question, then another, until I was at the root of what we call the motive, his reason for buying. I said, "Scott, sounds like this was a frustrating experience. What would have made it a great one?" I could have lived with some of the quality issues, but what really pissed me off was how they left the house each night. I travel a lot and was gone the week they were here. Every night I'd call home to talk to the family. My wife gave me the third degree about the painters. She was ticked they left tools lying around. She had to clean up after them every day. She was mad at me for hiring them. She was worried one of the kids would step on a tool and hurt themselves. Pouncing would have sounded like, "We never leave a mess, blah, blah, blah." I chose to play dumb. And that's a concept we talk about in sales. You got to play dumb. The dumber you are, the more money you're going to make, by the way. Meaning you're not making assumptions.
Sure.
And so he said, my reply was, "You caught grief for that every night?" See, that's appeal. All right. The essence of peeling or playing dumb is curiosity. When you're curious, you ask questions and avoid making assumptions about what's important to somebody. Being curious communicates that what they're saying is important, that they are important. With each question delivered, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to fast forward to this.
Sure.
After a few rounds of this, still standing in the foyer, I asked him the question that unearthed the root of his pain and positioned us as the only and obvious choice for the next project. I said, "I'm sorry to hear all that. I imagine it really tested your patience, but I'm curious. When you came home from your trip, what was the vibe like in the house?"
Oh.
All right. See, poke. Yeah. Scott's face reddened, a vein popped out of his neck, and he said, "She was so mad at me, she made me sleep on the couch for 2 nights after I got home."
Wow.
I'm sparing you the colorful language he used. So then I said to him, there were a couple other things, but basically this is how it wraps up. I'll get to the point. "Scott, before I do my thing here, what would need to happen for you and your wife to feel you had the best experience you could ever have with a company?" He thought for a minute and said, "I don't want my wife to have to clean up after anyone." I said, "I have a crazy idea. What would happen if I wrote it into the contract that if your wife had to spend 1 second of her life cleaning up after our crew, the entire project would be free?" Wow. He said, "You'd do that?" I said, "I would." He says, "The job's yours." I said, "I haven't even told you how much it's going to be. Most homes like yours are in the $20,000 to $30,000 range." "That's fine. I know you're our guy." Contract signed, deposit check collected, new project. Now, you cannot do that if you don't have your systems in place with your team, if you don't communicate, what's important to the client and transfer that trust to your crew. Sure. Like, I did this because I had the fucking Marine Corps of painting crews. Like, they were the best. Okay. Sure. Kind, courteous, clean. I was not writing a check I knew we couldn't cash. Okay. Right. But Scott's whole issue was not the money. He didn't want to get a bunch of other bids. Yeah. All right. It was, he did not want his wife to go through that again. And he certainly didn't want to go through it again and have to sleep on the couch for 2 nights.
Unbelievable. I mean, it's textbook. And you know what's interesting, man? How many people I know don't ask even sometimes it doesn't always have to be that you're coming into a problem, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes it just might be helping someone remember the last experience they had and trying to dig that up. I try to forget bad experiences. I don't know about you, man, but like ultimately I like to ask, have you ever hired a professional painting business before? Mm-hmm. Oh, you have. And what was that experience like?
So that's a yes, no question.
Sure.
That's a yes or no question. How can you ask it differently? So it's not a yes or no.
Okay. So pivot from there would be like, man, let me lean on you. Tell me.
What's your experience in working with painting companies?
There you go. Something like that. Yeah.
See, because now it gets them talking. If you just go,
Sure.
have you hired a painter before? They go, yes. And now you're like, now what?
Hey, I'm coachable.
Oh, that's cool. But when you ask an open-ended question, or when you get an objection, just be curious. You know, like so many times, I guarantee you, everybody listening to this right now has had somebody say to them, your price is too high.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone.
Our default reaction.
That's like an automatic response, by the way, in sales in general. But yes, you got to have an answer for that.
Our automatic default answer to that is we get defensive.
Sure.
We go, inflation, I have overhead, blah, blah, blah. This, that, that post I was telling you about the other day, that was all the shit that was in there.
Competitors are no.
And somebody says to me, they go, hey, your price is too high. All right. I affirm that. I go, I hear that from time to time. What makes you say that? See, I've put it back on them to defend their point of view, not me defend my pricing. I know my fucking pricing. I know what it takes to do the job that you've called me the professional to do.
Yeah.
So I don't need to be on the defensive.
Dude,
now, tonality is key here, by the way. You can't be a smartass with this.
What makes you say that? Right. Yeah.
Yeah, Tanner, man, I hear that from time to time, but what makes you say that?
I love the simple nature of this. It's very simple. Anyone can do this. Like, this is just, like you said, you made a good point. Acting dumb or actually not assuming, and that's not, man, it's brilliant. I love it.
Well, remember I was taught this years ago by a buddy of mine. Customers don't go to customer school.
Sure.
Okay. They just do what they've been trained to do through the years by all the stupid, posts and videos and TV commercials you'll see about Angie and all this other crap going, get 3 bids and make sure you give them all a colonoscopy before you hire them to make sure you have the right guy and all this other garbage. And so customers, and the reason people feel they got to get so many bids. Now, listen, I know there's different disc profiles and all that. Like a high C, it fears being wrong. They're going to do more research. A high DI like me is going to go, I'm going to look at your reviews. If you answer your phone, I'm probably going to hire you. Yeah. Okay. So there's both extremes here, but most people do not want to waste a bunch of time getting a bunch of bids and shopping through this. That's why this human connection and the motive is so important, that when you can truly connect with somebody in a way that your competitors never will, you've elevated yourself, and now they're comparing every other conversation with you, and it just sets you apart. Now, on occasion, a lot of people simply just don't want to spend that much money on the thing, right? I get that. Okay. However, most salespeople blame the quality of the lead, or they say, oh, they were cheap or whatever. No, the real issue, they didn't hire you, and 99% of the times, is they didn't trust you. You didn't build enough trust, AKA value.
Sure.
And value being communicated and trust being built is not you running your mouth about how great you are in your pretty little presentation folders.
Yep.
It is, are you making them feel important? You do that, it's game over.
Game over. You can't. And what's interesting is you're playing in a different ballpark, man. When you're dialing down, you're peeling back that value, where 3 other competitors come in. They just see, okay, you want to repaint? Got it. Let me give you a quote for repainting. Tom's over there having this guy unload the true motives that people naturally aren't trained, like you said, to express. We got to peel that back, man. Man, this was beautiful. Actually, this was a secret sales training. Very deep into this podcast, Tom. Actually, this was the goal. I needed a boost, but dude, thank you, man. I know you have.
Appreciate it.
When we connected the other day, I'm like, you know what? This guy is I think we have a lot in common, man. I think we both want to serve. And I want to introduce you to my audience. I have a lot of great people that, from what you just went over, this is a major need here. No, there's nothing like it in the contracting space. There's no secret as to why you've built such a powerful brand. So I encourage
Thank you.
my listeners to go and check out what Tom's building. The most important thing that I've gathered from this is repetition. It's the role plays. I mean, you and I, Tom, we have a lot of years of experience in communicating. Some people start a painting business because they were angry at their boss, and now they have a lot to learn. So, the role playing. So how do people get started with you? What's the easiest way to go about this to where, they can just, get thrown into the fire and go through these reps, man?
I appreciate that, man. Just head to the contractorfight.com and all the info you need is there. There's links to free resources. There's our sales training, our events, all that stuff is there. That's probably the best way. And I want to say this quickly, since we talked about pricing and sales and all this other stuff.
Sure.
In our free group the other day, I posted a picture of a side of a house. And I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't see it, but
it was an eruption of comments and chest beating and bragging and arguments from all the painters in the world. Oh. And every now and then I do that just to be entertained. And so, but what I want to share here, guys, why drip jobs is so important. Like, you pull up your thing, like, most people don't have production rates.
It's crazy.
If you were to look at this post, man, all the 80, 100 comments or whatever it was, like, it was the side of a house that called it maybe 50 feet wide, maybe 20 feet high. And I said, one color on the soffit and fascia, one color on the body. It's stucco. I didn't say how much money would you charge. I asked them, how much time would you bid the side of the house at? Just don't complicate it with, all the other shit. Just give me production time, right? Because painters complicate everything.
Imagine what these answers were.
Dude, I had everything from 4 hours.
Sure.
And I said the scope's 2 coats. Okay. I didn't say how to do it. I didn't, it was just literally 2 different colors. I had 4 hours. I had 4 days. I had 3 days with a crew of 2.
Sure.
Okay. What's that? 24, 48 hours to the side of the house.
Yeah.
And some of these guys, they're always posting in the group how I'm always so much more expensive. I never get any work because of my price. And the default is to go, no, you're probably priced accurately. And I don't doubt that how they're coming up with their hourly rate is probably accurate. Their issue is production rates.
That's right.
So I guess my point here is, don't get so caught up on what your competitors are charging, because you have no idea how they're viewing the thing.
Sure.
Okay. My old business partner, the first job we went to bid together after we partnered up, he had double the hours I did and we were the same price. I was just charging more per hour.
Right.
Okay. So, if somebody's lower price than you, it doesn't necessarily mean they're a lowballer. It means they probably don't know their production rates. They're probably not job costing and tracking and doing all the stuff that Drip Jobs is doing for you. That's why it's so important to get those starting production rates and be consistent with those, because then you could really get your team into a groove. And I just see it all the time where all these posts, and that's why I never ask, what do you charge? I don't care what you charge. How much time are you putting into this thing?
Right.
That's the starting point.
It is the starting point.
And, if you're not, all right, the reason my old partner was twice the hours, he never sprayed anything. He never grew up spraying. He was in the industry forever. Great guy.
Sure.
And I sprayed.
Yeah.
So you don't know how somebody's planning on producing it. You don't know the skill of their people.
There needs to be an element of accuracy in your estimating. You could be the greatest salesperson ever, but generally speaking, you have to have some basis point, and it gives you the confidence to present your pricing as well as I know exactly how much time this is going to take, to the T, because I have reference points and I put in data. I'll tell you this: when I started doing production rates for my exteriors, I have had a significant increase in closing percentage simply because we display the measurements on the proposal. For me, as a buyer, I like to know what I'm paying for. I don't know. I'm not sure if everyone's like that, but at the very least, if you go to a restaurant and it just says food, you're probably going to be a little curious as to what was on there. Well, I like to know what I'm paying for. So we break it down: substrate, walls and trim, this is the price. Gutters, this is the price. You know how it is. Production rate. But I've just noticed my educated buyers, the people that,
Mm-hmm.
fit the mold of our ideal customers, they value that. They want to see the product. They want to see what they're paying for. They value this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
And it's not because they're cheap, by the way. A lot of guys think, oh, they're asking me to these breakdowns and all these questions because they're just cheap. No. In fact, people with money, one of the reasons they have money is they're responsible with the money.
100%.
Okay.
100%.
So it's really that simple.
Yeah.
It's not that sometimes they're just curious.
Yeah. You ready for this, curveball? You ready for this? So here's another thing that production rates helps with. And I know you've probably ran into this with some of your customers or some of your clients of your coaching program, but let's say they're doing a full interior, repaint, and they present the price, and you have a hot customer, you've Shin-fu'd them, they're in line with who we think is our ideal client, but then out of nowhere, they say, you know what? This looks great, but you know what? I really don't want to do the ceiling. And then at that point, you can't reverse engineer your price without production rates.
Yeah.
And you say, hold on a second, I'll get back with you, because you have to reverse engineer the entire price that was bundled up to kind of present something fair to the customer. And then watch this. The customer calls back a month later because you lowballed the deduction. The customer calls back a month later and says, you know what, I want to add the ceilings. And they say, well, wouldn't it be the same price as what you deducted?
Right.
And then you're in a position where, well, it doubles over time. You know what I'm saying? So production rates protects the integrity of the pricing structure to where things can be interchanged and added with minimal friction. That's a big thing that most people don't think about.
So way back in the day, I was itemizing our everything in the room, everything in the house.
Sure.
We had a software doing it at the time, so it was easy. I can go through a 6,000 square foot home, have everything itemized by room and by price in like 20 minutes. Like it was pretty easy. And so, if people wanted it broken down, I didn't do that by default, by the way. I just had all the info and then I could hit a button and here's the whole job. And if they said they wanted it broken down, I actually added 30 to 50% to every item. I raised the price because I don't know if you're just going to pick the baseboard in the 3 rooms downstairs.
100%.
You know what I'm saying?
I know what you mean.
And that's where you educate people on the economy of scale.
Yes.
It's like, if I'm going to come back and add the ceiling later, it's more expensive because now I got to cut in against the wall and all that other garbage.
Protect all the wall. Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I've personally been through it where I've gotten myself in a jam because of this without the education component. So Tom, this was a pleasure, man. Guys, head over to contractorfight.com. Check out what Tom's going on. He has like the biggest podcast for contractors, Contractor Fight. That's easy to find. Tom, thank you, man, for blessing us with your wisdom and helping me understand on a deeper level this Shin-fu methodology, which is a strategic approach to spending the right time with the right people, which most of us are doing, and we're just filtering out people and wasting that time driving with nothing other than just, hey, we have a name, an address, and a phone number, and we're going. Which Tom, you've really shed light on the importance of this, man. Thank you.
I appreciate you having me, man. Thanks.
All right, my man.